today's video, I am going to show you some books from when I was a kid. Bread and Butter ASMR recently did a bookshelf tour of the books she had in high school and college. This is a little different than that, for a similar reason. I mentioned in my jigsaw puzzle video that my father gave me 2 enormous boxes of stuff, mainly jigsaw puzzles, but there were also a lot of books from when I was a kid. I'm not entirely certain why he gave me all of these books. They're mostly from elementary school and middle school, from what I can tell. And they're in no particular order, and I haven't gone through them very carefully, so some of them might be a surprise to me too. And let's see, is there anything else to say? Yes, I am the youngest child in my family of many children, so most of these books were hand-me-downs. So they look pretty old. They are pretty old, but they would have been hand-me-downs, many of them from my oldest brother. I used to raid his bookshelf. Although interestingly, what I did notice while going through these books, there weren't any Discworld books. Terry Pratchett, Discworld. And those were the ones I stole from my brother the most and would probably like to keep. Who knows where they are? I have a tendency to give books away. I just think if I like a book, I should give it to a friend, give it to whoever. Maybe I'll give some of these to my niece if I see any good ones. Okay, so up top we have C.S. Lewis, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Book 3 in the Chronicles of Narnia. Here's the Dawn Treader, and a sort of dragony fellow. This looks ancient. It was $2.95, which is pretty good for a paperback. Let's see. I think I read every single one of the Chronicles of Narnia. They get a little bit weird at the end, don't they? The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I know I read that one. Prince Caspian, yes. Voyage of the Dawn Treader. The Silver Chair. The Horse and His Boy. The Magician's Nephew. And The Last Battle. Yes, I read all of them. And they were definitely stolen from my brother. I remember taking these from his bookshelf. I always liked it when they had little illustrations. You know, it didn't need to be an illustrated book, but it adds a little bit of flavor. Oh, this book smells old. You can hear the spine cracking. I bet we come across a couple more of these. Okay, this one, Little Town on the Prairie. So this is Laura Ingalls Wilder. This would be Laura and her older sister, Mary. This was required reading. As a kid, we read Little Cabin in the Woods, Little House in the Prairie. I ended up reading, I think, every single one in this series. Some for school and some just because. So it's interesting. I read recently that these books were kind of propaganda that, Laura Ingalls Wilder, her family, they weren't good farmers, and her husband was a failed farmer, and these books were sort of like propaganda of the frontier, and I haven't looked into that, but it was interesting just given that I know how common that these books were to read. I did enjoy them as a child. Okay, here are some really little kid books. See, there's teeth marks here. The Tale of Jemima Puddle Duck by Beatrix Potter. I think my old dog probably took a bite of this. She loved to bite books. We have Mrs. Tittlemouse, The Tailor of Gloucester, Squirrel Nutkin. I loved these little books as a kid. They were so small. They have these small little illustrations that are so cute. So I have this one, Jemima Puddle Duck, and The Tale of Peter Rabbit, which is a classic. And you can see that the shape of the rabbits was always so funny. They're very, very cute. Look at this troublemaker rabbit getting kicked out of the house. Look at them here. There's 3 siblings. So Peter Rabbit and another Tale of Jemima Puddle Duck. I wonder why we have 2 of these. Anyway, they're just like a really cute little set. I guess we'll see if there are more somewhere in here. We have The Legend of Luke, which is Brian Jacques, I think is how you say that. Pardon me, I really don't speak French. I read so many Redwall books, starting when I was about in 4th grade, I think. For non-Americans, that's like, I think when you're 10, when you're 9 and 10 is that year. I know in 5th grade too, I read so many of these books. Lots of little pictures. More books should have little pictures in them. I think being an adult, we don't get enough little pictures. Look at this little mouse with a sword yelling at a ship. So, there are quite a few here. We've got, just next to it is Martin the Warrior. Author of Salamandastron and the Bellmaker, which I definitely read both of those as well. But some of them I would have gotten from the library, so I never owned a whole set or a whole collection. I used the school library a lot as a kid, so I would not be surprised to see more of these. These were really formative. I remember, in school we'd have to write little fictions, and mine were always about woodland creatures and, having crazy feasts on the different cheeses they would eat and strawberry cordial or whatever. I had no idea what cordial was. I still don't think I've ever had cordial, but these little feasts they have sound incredible. Okay, this one is Many Waters by Madeleine L'Engle, a companion to A Wrinkle in Time. Now, to my knowledge, there are 4 books in this series, and I read all 4, I think in middle school, around then. So it would have been 11, 12. This one has a bookmark in it. Any pictures? I don't think so. did really like these covers. So this one is about the twins, I think. They go on a weird biblical experience where they're in the desert. I don't know, this was a weird book. Do we want to see what my bookmark says? Oh, it's very eloquent. Scribbles. This is Julie of the Wolves. I still think about this book, winner of the Newbery Medal. Alone and lost on the north slope of Alaska, Miax rebels against a home situation she finds intolerable. She runs away towards San Francisco, towards her pen pal who calls her Julie. But soon Miax is lost in the Alaskan wilderness without food, without even a compass. Slowly she is accepted by a pack of Arctic wolves, and she comes to love them as if they were her brothers. With their help and the drawing of her father's training, she struggles day by day to survive. In the process, she is forced to rethink her past and to define for herself the traditional riches of life. So, the thing that really, oh, look at this wolf. The thing that really struck me about this book, there were sequels too, and maybe it happened in a sequel, but it tells the story partly from the wolf's perspective, and it doesn't anthropomorphize them too much. Like, it tries to show them having, very wolfy thoughts. But I remember, like, rabies becomes a problem, and I didn't know about rabies as a kid. And it just sort of left an impact on me. So, I liked this book as a kid. I wonder how well it aged. Some of these, the Metal and Langle books, I tried to read as an adult, and I was like, this is very weird. The language is weird, and not my favorite thing. Okay, this, though, is one of my favorite things. This is a Tamora Pierce book. This is the second book in the Song of the Lioness series, called In the Hand of the Goddess. So I read a whole bunch of Tamora Pierce books when I was about 12 and 13. I was obsessed. These I thought about more than almost any other book I read as a kid. Alana in the first book is 11 years old, I think, and she trades places with her twin brother and pretends to be a boy so that she can be a knight. She makes a lot of knight friends, and everyone thinks she's a boy, and she, has to keep that up, which becomes a problem as she gets older. This book in particular is about that. So this is when she's, a teenager trying to pretend to be a boy, growing up around all these other boys. And it's, there's magic and sword fighting, magic fighting. I loved these books. So, when my niece turned 10 or 11, I got her the set of this book. And I was like, if you like it, I'll get you the Wild Magic books too, because I loved those books. And she never read them. To this day, she has never read these books, and that, it's tragic. And she does read. She's a reader, and she's a nerd. She reads, like, books about this kind of thing, magic and, sort of medieval times, and queens and kings and princes, whatever. But not the one I got her, which is really just a shame. Okay, so have a very beaten up copy of The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. And you can see down here is a little baby swan or a cygnet that is untying the shoe of a young boy. I read this book many, many times as a kid. I loved it, so it's funny, I read it when I was pretty young, but I remember this very well. The story was that this particular swan didn't have a voice. He was mute, and to solve this, he's given a trumpet, as you saw in the pictures. He also has a little blackboard that he uses to write. Unfortunately, most birds don't read, so learning to play the trumpet was his only way forward. I think he becomes a jazz star in the end. I'm not sure, it might not be jazz, but he does become a pretty famous swan. I think he might be, it says Boston, he's in Boston. So now he's got his blackboard, he has a medal. I think this is a money pouch, and his chalk, of course, for writing. So I loved this book. It was very charming as a kid. I have no idea. It's pretty old now, so perhaps, there might be elements in it that aren't wonderful. I don't know. But John Updike said, "We are lucky to have this book." And as a kid, you can see it was well loved. So this was one of my favorites. So here's another E.B. White book. This one I think is way more famous. It's Stuart Little. Stuart Little is a mouse in the family of Frederick C. Littles, and is pleasantly debonair little character with a shy, engaging manner and a somewhat philosophical turn of mind. His size, just over 2 inches, does give him some trouble now and then. So, this one they've made into a movie, right? I don't think I ever watched it. I don't actually remember this one at all. The name is familiar. I'm certain I read it. But, it did not delight me like The Trumpet of the Swan. So, maybe I'll give these to my nephew. He's a bit younger than my niece and might still enjoy them. Okay, here's another classic, Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. Here, of course, is the Black Beauty in question. I am not a horse person. I'm not a horse girl. Never. I was never hit with that affliction. I did like this book, though. Black Beauty's tale, as told by himself, is the fascinating story of the life of a horse 100 years ago, when horses were part of everyone's life. Although his colthood and early life were happy, Black Beauty tastes the bitterness of cruel grooms and indifferent masters as he passes from hand to hand, progressing from the country to London and back again. I do remember, so the author gave Black Beauty a variety of life experiences. He starts, I don't remember, but I know that he has fancy times, and then there are times when he's almost starving and he's worked too hard. Things like that, to see sort of what horses were doing, they were used for, and the possible conditions that they could have in their life. So, an old war horse. I do remember that. A London cab horse, horse fair. Here's another Redwall book. We've got Marlfox, a novel of Redwall. A grand adventure story, breathtaking. No beast living can hide from thee, O thou who treads invisibly, cross hill and vale, through woods and rocks. Marlfox, Marlfox, Marlfox. That was another lovely quality of these books, in addition to just being absolutely charming in their ways. They all had like poems and riddles and ancient secrets, hidden passageways. It felt very exciting and mysterious. Look at this little hedgehog. Oh. So, I don't know, I loved these as a kid. I have no idea if kids are still reading them. Here is another Song of the Lioness book. So we're back onto more Pierce, the first adventure. So this is Alana as a 11-year-old girl with a very pretty horse going off to become a knight. I absolutely still love these books. Like, the Redwall books I don't really think about anymore. Or the Trumpet of the Swan. As a kid, I thought about it a lot, but as an adult, it doesn't affect me. But I still think about the universe where Alana is, and I think about those books. Okay. So, here we have a Philip Pullman book. I always like when the author's name is as big as the title, because then people are just buying the book for the author and not the book itself. But it's The Amber Spyglass, which is the third book in the, here we go, the Golden Compass series. So book 1 is the Golden Compass, and book 2 is the Subtle Knife. And I read the Golden Compass for school, and I really liked it, so I got the next 2. Here's the Subtle Knife. And that would have been when I was 13. Yeah, I was 13 years old reading these. And I loved them. They were like, they made me think about the world in a new way. They cover, their adventure stories about kids, but they deal a lot with religion and philosophy, as far as I remember. The afterlife is a big thing, sacrifice and relationships. So I think I read the third book quite a few times. Oh no. I wonder what happened here. Oh, look, I taped it back together. So I clearly cared quite a bit to tape it back together after whatever accident befell it. Okay, here we have the Silver Chair and The Last Battle. These just look old, right? Like maybe from the 80s. I wonder if the book will tell us. Oh, this is from 1970. I wonder if this was my dad's. 1970. My brother definitely didn't exist in 1970. But my dad did. I wonder whose book this was. Yeah, my dad would have been a bit old to be reading them then. Maybe they were still selling the same version. I don't know. This was originally printed in 1953. And this one. C.S. Lewis got a little apocalyptic at the end. Same thing, published in 1956, but this book edition is from 1970. I don't know. Because, yeah, I mean, this style, it looks quite old. So here is another Tamora Pierce book, but this one I got a little bit later. It's quite a bit thicker. And I never finished this series. I didn't like it as much for some reason, but I don't remember why. It's funny, these books all smell like old books. What year was this published? Yeah, I think this is Squire, which would have made it. Oh, this is the third book. So maybe I did. I don't think so. 2001. This was a gift from a friend, though, who knew I loved Tamora Pierce. So here's another Madeleine L'Engle book. I still really do love the cover art. Just this ombre of pink going down to sort of this peachy orange. Here we've got the youngest child, Charles, I think his name is. I could be wrong on that. A wind in the door. I don't remember his adventure at all. No, I have no idea. Meg Murray can't help worrying when her 6-year-old brother, Charles Wallace, announces that there are dragons on the vegetable garden. He's so bright and so different from other kids that he's being bullied at school, and he is also strangely, seriously ill. But Charles Wallace is right about the dragons. Actually, a friendly entity who has come to help Charles Wallace fight his sickness and to take Meg and her friend, Calvin O'Keefe, on a terrifying, wonderful journey into galactic space, where they must battle the forces of evil to save Charles Wallace and themselves. Well, that all sounds familiar, but I think it all kind of blended into A Wrinkle in Time. Okay. Now this I would have stolen from my older sister. Angus, Thongs, and Full Frontal Snogging. Confessions of Georgia Nicholson. What an unbelievably brilliant night. Double cool with knobs. Robbie kissed me. The sex god has landed. This is definitely a teenage girl book. Angus is the mixed breed cat. Half domestic tabby, half Scottish wildcat. Thongs, stupid underwear. What's the point of them anyway? They just go up your bum as far as I can tell. And Full Frontal Snogging is kissing with all the trimmings. So, yeah, this is like a diary. And it's very much just like a teenage girl book. I don't remember it at all, but I do remember that title.